Hi there, Daquan Henry here with another market update video for you guys, the very first one of the year. Hoping 2026 will be a bit different than 2025. As always, the Toronto Real Estate Board does release a market watch update with all the statistics of home sales going on in the area, and I like to create this video to break it down for you, to give you all the information that I think is important or notable that you should know as a current home owner or even a future home owner. So let's hop into it and take a look at some of these numbers. So no surprise, we are still seeing prices on the decrease here across the GTA for a majority of reasons. I do like to look at the year over year first and foremost, just to take a look and see what's happening. I am going to talk a little bit about overall sales in the market for 2025 because it was quite shocking to see what some of these final numbers we're looking at. But year over year, we are still seeing a decrease in sales from 2024 for the month of December year over year. Keep in mind, December is usually a little bit of a slower month, obviously, just with the holidays and the weather and all of that. But we are still seeing a almost 10% decrease in the total amount of sales happening. Typically, we see when we see a decrease in sales, that's also when we see a decrease in prices. But this is just going to show that there's a lot of buyers and sellers that are struggling to come together on an agreement to make that happen. So we are still seeing sales decrease across the board there. In December, we also did see a little bit more or in and around the amount of listings that have happened. So this is very interesting to keep in mind and see, because we are still, let's say, piling on the amount of new listings that are coming up, but less of them are selling essentially. So once we do start seeing that kind of imbalance of sales and new listings, it's typically going to say that there's going to be more inventory or more supply than there is demand. The more options people have, the more options buyers have, typically we start to see prices come down, because if one seller's not willing to make a good deal, I'm sure there's going to be someone else out there who's willing to do the same. So that's kind of the first thing that we like to take a look at on here. Just to kind of echo the point I just made, we are still seeing active listings pile up a lot, right? 17% more active listings than the year before. These homes quite literally feel like they're just trying to, they're getting just slapped on the pile here as more of them are now available for sale. The average price here, I actually thought was quite shocking here to see the average price in the Toronto and the GTA area nearing a million bucks. Obviously, $1 million is still high, depending on the area that you're looking at there, or just the figure in general. But this figure has come down tremendously. So to think about the average home in the GTA now selling for under $1 million really just shows how real this price discovery is. I find that all these metrics, they do tie into one another, because even when we look at that average days on market here, we are just seeing that homes are taking a lot longer to sell. There's less sales happening, and there's a lot more homes sitting on the market looking for a buyer. So realistically, with all these things coming together, the only option is going to be for prices to come down. I shouldn't say the only option, but the more realistic option is prices coming down. So even when we kind of look at that 416 and 905 areas and those year over year changes in specific segments, almost across the board, besides Fort Toronto townhouses, we're seeing prices on the decrease, right? I feel like this townhouse stat here of going up is really just because there hasn't been that many townhouses for sale, like a very, very small number. So if there's one or two sales that happen there that are just higher than the average, then it really pulls up this figure. So this is really, I would say, like a low volume sales that's kind of boosting it up. But overall, across the board, you can see that these prices are definitely on the way down in every home type realistically. And then for as I said, the whole market across the board. So looking at all these numbers, if you are a seller at the moment, it's really, really important for you to understand the information out here, because if you are not someone who needs to sell your home right now, you probably shouldn't. The reason for that is that prices are probably going to be a lot lower than what you think they are. Prices are looking like they're going to continue to kind of go down. So if you're not someone who really, really needs to sell and understands this, you're not going to have a good time on the market. Because if you're going onto the market, you need to know that you're going to be up on the market with other sellers who are likely more desperate or more motivated to sell than you are. So unless you're in that bracket and really ready to list your home properly for the right price and find a buyer, you're not going to enjoy time on this market. Like if you're an investor who's, ready to cash out and you've been holding it for a bit and you're looking for the highest price, you're probably not going to do that. You're probably not going to be able to kind of find the price that you're looking for. So, in my opinion, looking at these stats right now and those average prices, unless you are a motivated seller, you should probably not be on the market right now. Going back to those overall stats that I was talking about across the entire GTA area, last year in 2025, we finished with just over 62,000 transactions. And if you're not familiar with, how the market has been over the last little bit, this is the lowest number of total sales we've seen in the GTA since 2000. A tremendously low amount of sales that honestly we've seen last year. Even just relating it to the peak of the market in 2021 when we had over 120,000. So we're almost like half of that right now. So when you're looking at this information and we're talking about this total transactions, there's two very big points that I think are important to interpret and realize when it comes to this. The first is that, in my opinion, the low amount of transactions that we're seeing right now is not exactly representative of demand in the market. Of course, there are some buyers who are moving to the sidelines because they're not happy with where prices are headed, a little bit fearful of buying and then see home prices still come down. But I think it's important to realize that there is still demand. There are still people who want to be able to purchase homes in this market or the market that they live in or whatever pocket in the GTA that they're in. There are still a lot of non-homeowners who want to be homeowners. There's still a lot of upsizers who want to upsize, downsizers who want to, downsize as well. The big problem on why I feel like we're not seeing a lot of these transactions happening is that sellers are not coming down and being realistic in where prices are at or headed to meet where buyers are. I personally have a lot of buyers who we're working towards with, and they are looking for something specific, and they would be very happy to purchase a home. It's just that sellers are not meeting them where they need to be in order to make those transactions happening. And I think that's a very fair statement, especially when you look at the data I just showed before of the active listings piling up on there. It's not that these homes are in areas where no one wants to live or home types that no one wants. It's just purely price is not being agreed upon between the buyer and the seller. And that's why we're seeing very few transactions happening, purely just because of that dynamic. The second part that I think is important to know about looking at this information is that the 62,000 transactions that have happened in there, it's very interesting to see because this is really showing that there's not that many real estate agents out there doing transactions. Just in case you haven't seen these stats before, right now, over last year, 52% of registered agents in the Toronto Real Estate Board did 0 deals on there. So when we do talk about this amount of transactions happening, this is a really good indicator, in my opinion, that one, less people are wanting to become real estate agents. And I do think that we're going to start to see a lot of people who, in my opinion, shouldn't have been real estate agents in the first place now feel like they have to exit the industry just because it is a lot more difficult to put transactions together here and help both buyers and sellers. So this really goes to show, how the market is going to affect the industry as a whole moving forward. So if you know a real estate agent, check in on them because they're probably not doing so well, unfortunately. So if you're a seller in this market, it's really important that you understand where prices are at and where prices are headed, because from the peak of the market, we're almost 30% down in the sense of real prices in real estate here. So if you are a seller who is cherry picking the comparables you want to use for evaluating your property and choosing, some high sales that happened a few years ago, you need to really understand that those days are far, far away from where we are right now. And like I said, if you do want your home sold, you really have to price it well because buyers have a lot to choose from. And on the other hand, if you are a buyer in this market and you understand where prices are at and where they have been and even where they're going, you're probably feeling a little bit nervous or maybe worried about getting into the market and worried about if prices are going to continue to fall down. But what's most important is to make sure that you are buying a good property at a good price at this point in time. And what I like to tell my buyers is that if you are worried about further price downside, let's just say you think prices are going to come down another 6, 7, 10% or something along those lines there, then your two options really are to wait to see if that happens. It may happen. It may not happen though. And we might start to see the bottom come and pass us and prices continue to go up and you might miss the mark there. So the other suggestion that I have for buyers who have this mindset of being worried around where prices are going to be is that it's good to just find a deal currently where you're able to pick it up at that 10% under market value or wherever you think prices are going to head. That way you have a built-in buffer into the price that you're buying today. Because if you find a home and you can get it for under market value, then that way, if prices do continue to fall, you have a little bit of that buffer and you won't ever be in the red, let's say, from your property's valuation from when you bought it from to what it's worth now. I think it's a very, very good strategy to keep in mind if you are a buyer in this market. The last point that I want to make for buyers and just in general, I find people's experience on the working in the market right now is when we take a look at these average prices across the board, obviously they do range in the area you're at, with some being at over $1 million and under $1 million. I really like to speak to that because I find that depending on the inventory and the product you're looking for, the markets and homes over $1 million, the buyers in that bracket versus the buyers under $1 million are experiencing tremendously different things when it comes to finding a home. And I'll show you examples of what I mean by this. This is a listing in Mississauga that my team and we did put on the market. And I like to really use this as an example because we did get this sold just a few days ago in January here. And if you are a buyer looking under $1 million and you're hearing about prices coming down and buyers having all these options and there's no competition, you're probably asking yourself, where is this market that everyone's talking about? Because I find that if you are a buyer under $1 million, like I said before, you are experiencing a very different market than what you're hearing about or seeing online. This is a good example, our listing here, because we did list it at $899 there, and we did end up selling it for over list price at $940. The thing about this listing and why it's interesting is because we did not essentially have a offer date scenario where a lot of people are familiar with that, where you list it low and then a bunch of buyers come in and then sells for more. That wasn't the plan. That was not the plan that we had before then. We listed it, we were priced to sell, but then we had such an overwhelming amount of demand for this property where we had over 60 total groups at our open house and 37 private booked showings. And we ended up getting 2 offers as well. As you can see, our client was really, really happy here. Shameless plug, I won't lie, on our listing. But the point that I'm trying to make here is that there was so much demand for a lot of these properties that are under that $1 million price point versus, at least to me, I find over $1 million, where if you are looking under that $1 million price point, you're definitely noticing a lot more competition than you would expect, especially for the homes that look very good and show very well. You are likely competing right now, in my opinion, in a lot of different pockets across the GTA, which is very different than the story that you hear from a lot of people online and even from the numbers that I just talked to you about. It is a very, very different market. And on the inverse of that, if you are looking above that $1 million price point, you do start to see the opposite of a lot of deals that come out and are selling for a lot under list price. This is another home in Mississauga, another detached home here where, they were originally listed last year for 1.3. And then after price discovery, price reductions, all of that, they ended up selling for 1.1, right? This is the market I find that you typically hear about on the news with prices crashing and buyers having a lot of options, which isn't necessarily not true. But I think it's a really important distinction for people who are out there looking, that the price point that you're shopping in, it really, really makes a difference in the competitive aspect and the number of people you're going up against, because those markets above and below $1 million, in my opinion, right now are moving very differently. Either way, that's all the information that I have for you today. I hope you found this market update very useful. I'm very interested to see where the rest of 2026 is going to go. As always, I will keep you updated with these monthly videos, talking to you about what these stats are saying, what's the most important parts, and what matters to you as a buyer or seller or a future buyer or seller. If you have any questions about the stuff I spoke today, I would be more than happy to chat with you. Wherever you're watching this video, if you do click below somewhere in the bio there, you will find my contact details. I would be more than happy to set up a call and go over your real estate wants and needs. Until next time, have a great day.